Hey, Liron here. If you're ready, I want to show you something crazy. So I'm going to show you how when you don't care about the result, and this is not woo stuff, when you don't care about the result, you're ironically producing the best result. Now, should you not care about the result of your paintings? No, I mean, you can do whatever you want. I'm just saying that being completely loose and free is exactly the kind of thing that allows you to paint with all of your mental faculties and all of your resources. And the upside, the other way around, if you're super nervous and you're super tight and you have to get a very specific result that you have in mind and you don't know to roll with the punches, this is what happens, okay? Now, this doesn't mean, and I'm going to do a quick sketch here. Look at how rough this sketch is. This doesn't mean you can't paint paintings that are highly detailed, highly realistic, and based on your vision. Funny enough, you get to paint your vision when you have that freedom I'm talking about. So let me show you, in my experience, that's the one thing most beginners lack. Okay, now, yes, some of my drawing experience and knowledge goes into this, right? So I can kind of wing it and get the details I want to look the way I want. Yes, but it doesn't take much to do what I just did here. Check it out. This is my sketch. Now, why is this my sketch? Let's just go very briefly over that. This is my sketch because I'm looking at the details and I care about the river. This is Hungary, by the way. I don't know where exactly. I care about the river. I care about this thing here, the building. I care about the foreground and maybe a bit of the cityscape details here and there. That's all I care about. And so that's what I'm putting on paper, because what you have to understand is a painting doesn't really, the buildings here don't exist, right? It's a figment of our vision and imagination. So it doesn't really matter if we draw and sketch out the building's details accurately. The only thing that matters is, can we produce an image that communicates our vision to the viewer? Think about it this way. It's super abstract. The only thing that matters is, can you produce a picture that tells the story for your viewer? That's the only thing that matters. So how about we try and do just that? So I'm seeing something really cool here. The sky is starting blue. So we got this nice little, relatively light blue, like so. And as we move down, I see a bit of this neutralization where the sky almost turns a little gray. So I'm going to use whatever leftovers I have on my palette. I actually have some beautiful Jaune Brilliant paint that is just going to neutralize the whole thing. I've been really enjoying using that. And I do see towards the bottom, believe it or not, a bit of warmth, warming up. So I'm going to put in a bit of my orange, a bit of my quinacridone rose. And remember, a painting is just a collection of visual ideas, which is exactly why the colors, the exact colors you're using, your accuracy, all of these things are secondary to your vision, okay? The only thing that matters is your ability to paint something that the viewer recognizes as your vision. That's the only thing that matters. So, see, there's the water here. I'm gonna just put it here directly. This is an oil stain, by the way. That's because my finger touched the paper at some point when I handled this thing, you know, cutting and all of that. That's why it happens. Feel free to ignore. It doesn't really destroy anything. So this is our water. Now, what do we have on the left? We have some trees and some details. Okay, I'm going to use the exact same green. Let me switch over to a smaller brush. It will be easier to handle the paint. I'm going to use the exact same pretty much exact same blue I've been using. I'm just going to add some red and black to it because some of this is quite dark actually and neutral. So this will be our trees to the left, okay? Right, it's visual ideas. These will be our foreground trees. Let me make some of these a little stronger. I'm going to add a bit of orange to it, okay? And don't worry, it's going to dry lighter. Actually, let me clean it up a bit. So, see, I'm editing in real time. As we speak, I'm editing my wash. Nothing is set in stone. This is watercolor. It actually flows quite nicely. You can go ahead and make changes. So let's introduce a bit more yellow to it. Let's introduce a bit more of our lemony yellow to it, right? Something like this. Doesn't feel green enough. Let's add some green here. Just pre-mixed green is fine too, right? There's no harm in that, really. Because when you paint with the ultimate freedom, you can do no harm. That's the thing, right? You're like the doctor's oath. Oath. You can do no harm. So these are our trees. Now, cityscape. So what am I seeing here? Visual ideas. I'm seeing a bit of warmth for the beautiful architectural details here. So I'm going to place down some warmth for the dome and for some of the buildings catching the light. And look at this, right? This is visual ideas, right? Some paint flew back there. It's fine. Now I'm seeing some shadows that are a little on the cool side. So I'm going to add my cool, just black color. And I'm going to start carving out some shadows right here. Right this second, okay? And here's where I'm going to introduce another magic trick to you in just a couple of moments. And that magic trick is you can continue painting while the paint is in this state. Okay, you can continue reworking it. You'll see exactly how in a moment. Okay, so there you go. Got the buildings here and there, right? Just a bunch of different details. You have a little bit of darkness here close to the water. And I actually see a bit of interesting warmth way behind. So I'm going to just mix something a little more warm here right to the side. But it's still a bit neutral. Just to indicate, yeah, you know, some areas here are warm. Even maybe on some of the buildings, I'm going to edit it. So I am placing stuff in almost fully disregarding their exact location, almost fully disregarding the actual tangible details. Like, is it a rooftop, right? Is it a dome? It doesn't matter. And you'll see why in a couple of moments, okay? So we're gonna let this dry. And with our next wash, you're gonna see absolute magic. In fact, you don't have to let it dry. You know, you can start, as I said, as I just mentioned actually, you can just start editing this thing. So, you know what? Let's zoom in on the dome. Let's start. The dome is warm, so I'm going to start with a warm bias. Here's a trick for you. Start with a warm bias, then add the dark. That's another option. Okay, you don't have to start with the dark. And it has this beautiful little spire, is that what it's called? And it has its dark section. And again, if you understand the nuances of watercolor control, you can do this regardless of how wet or dry the paper is, because you'll just work with whatever state the paper's at, okay? Now, here's where most people get into trouble. If they can't see what they were trying to paint immediately, their vision gets obscured and they start doubting themselves and they start, you know, thinking, oh, I messed up and this is beyond redemption. When usually it's not the case. Things are almost never beyond redemption. Here's something fun I'm seeing. There's a bit of a blue there in the background. Why not paint it now? Almost disregarding how wet things are. So I'm going to add both ultramarine and phthalo blue, and check it out. I'm going to try and do this with one little sweepy brush motion. So that's going to be the mountain ridge we're seeing in the background. It's going to drop all the way down to here and closely complement our cityscape. And you can break some of that line down, break some of that monotony down, like so. And this, my friend, is when the amateur gives up, right? Because what you have to understand is a painting goes through multiple evolutions. And what you want to do is just keep going and taking it through these evolutions, because you can't skip them very often. You just have to go through them. So let's get started here with this side of the river, right? And check it out. I'm going to start carving out some trees. There's a tower here, so I'm going to keep this space blank, showing where the tower is going to go later, right? And then this side of the river goes like that. There's a bridge here, so I'm going to almost pause for a second. And then under the bridge, I'm going to add just a couple of small details. In fact, we can connect the bridge. So let's bring some black because it's also a cool black. So it's going to cool it up a bit and differentiate it. And simply put in the bridge. Now the bridge is a visual idea. It is a shape. So you don't have to get the exact details of the bridge. You can, but remember it's a shape. Let's put the other bridge that's there at the back. Just a bit more water, going a bit lighter, right? And again, if you painted similar stuff before and you quit at this point, right? If you quit at this point, then know that this is what separates beginners from more, I don't want to say like necessarily professionals or good artists, but it definitely separates those who still have the vision to keep going and believe things will connect, okay? So while we're here, let's put in those very clear, nice shadows for the big building here in the middle, okay? So there we go. I'm just painting some of the shadows. Let's blue them up a bit. Let's make them a little cooler. And then we have these two beautiful tall spires, and things are still wet. Doesn't actually matter. You'll see why in a couple of moments, right? Because I'm going to come back with some white. I'm going to bring back a bunch of these beautiful details. So here we have these sections, and check it out. This is where, let's say, the shadow of the building ends, right? And I'm not even closely following the colors, the shapes, anything, right? And this is where maybe we have another shadow, right? But we also have very dark, warm shadows. So why not try and capture those? I'm going to actually use some violet, orange, red, a bit of black. Check it out. We have some very strong, warm shadows here. And if we can start establishing some of those, you'll see how at the end of this process, again, you have to be able to almost delay gratification, but if you're enjoying watercolor, you don't have to delay anything because things are just going to work out perfectly, okay? Then I know people watch my videos and they're scared for their life, okay? This is your exercise. This is your exercise in being a little more humble. And in what way do I mean humble? In a way that don't assume you know the final form of the painting. Don't assume you know it. You don't, because you still don't see it, okay? So I would avoid assuming that kind of a thing. Okay, look at this beautiful backdrop we've created earlier. Okay, I want to give you a quick win. So let's give you a quick win. Let's bring out some of the lights. Okay, let's make this building sing real quick before we establish more shadows. Okay, I know you want the quick win, and that is fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. So check it out. I'm gonna have just a bit of my just designer's gouache, white paint, white watercolor, anything would work really. And so we have this spire here. So let's place that down. Okay, we have one spire. We have another one right next to it, touching the shadow. See? It's really just touching that shadow. Now we have all of these beautiful details on the dome. So, and I could use a smaller brush, but I'm kind of enjoying the rough, rugged nature of this result. Okay, so we have this, we have a bit of the, around that dome, we do see some stuff, and check it out. The side that's in the light, very simply, just placing that in. Okay, the side of the building that's in the light. I know you want the quick win sometimes, and that is perfectly fine. So I'm gonna do that for you. There is this beautiful triangular shape. I don't know what this building is. If you know, well, let me know in a comment. Looks like either a government thing or, oh, sorry, it actually looks like a cathedral or something like that, right? But it could be a bunch of stuff. You know, European architecture is fascinating. It has a lot of different vibes to it. And then we have that row behind, right? So we have this tower. And then we have some lower hanging little details and then another tower, right? So right now we've brought back the light. You can do the same for some of these other buildings. So this side of the building catches the light. This side of the building catches the light, and a bunch of other details there in the background. See, kind of catching the light. I would love for those to dry a little lighter, a little darker actually, because we're using opaque paint. So we'll give it some time, and we'll see how this whole section ends up. Same here. Just a bunch of little details. Now, the beautiful thing is now that we have this base of light and dark, we can focus on this building for a while and see if we can bring it fully to life, right? So sometimes I'll take a break and I'll focus on a small area because it's fun. I want, though, to have stronger saturation of red here. So my darkest dark is actually going to be maybe a bit of a more saturated version. So this dome goes down here. And then you see we have these little areas of shadow. And among the spires, like so, right? And then if we move down, we have some more neutral two blue shadows. So we can start establishing those. See, right in between the highlights, right here. Right here. See? That's fine. Well, my Mac's going crazy. See, we're going to put these shadows here. Now we actually have some very dark shadows. So let's establish those, okay? So right around here, we have this spire, and then there's a dark on it. And then this triangular roof has a dark. And then this has a dark, and this has a dark. And the side here of this triangular shape has a dark, you see? See how the buildings start to take shape here as well, right? And you start to get a building. Now I'm gonna go ahead and strengthen some of these areas here. This is still technically wet and wet because some of these areas are still wet, believe it or not. And as we move down into the water, we could very easily, very directly, if you want to, paint reflection. So how would I go about that? For areas under the building, there's going to be a shadow, and I'm going to connect it to the building. For areas when there's no shadow, I'm actually going to increase the blue a bit. Feels like needs to be a little stronger in some areas. And then as we move farther, I'm kind of looking at the overall patterns. So as we move farther, it's just going to go lighter. And that is pretty much our structure here. This because there's a highlight, so we're going to keep it light. Right. Now everything here doesn't matter because we have the trees. So let's place those trees while we can, while everything is still a little wet. And this is the process. You work through the different stages of the painting until an image that you like pops and comes into play. Okay, you gotta not trust the process as a concept. You have to just trust that if you continue doing stuff, there is no reason that you won't get something that reads well. There really is no reason, right? You just keep at it. Keep at it. Because a painting is done at some point, but you've just might have not reached said point. Okay, now I'm just going to add some texture here to the trees mainly. And I'm going to add some of the darker bits that you're seeing here, quite strong. You have to go strong here in some spots. I'll try and keep some kind of an overarching pattern for the shadows in the trees, but we'll see how that goes. It doesn't matter as much because, again, this is kind of the side of the painting. It is close to a focal point, but it's pretty much to the side, so I don't care as much. The most important thing is, look at this, all the left section is pretty much in the shadow, so that I do want to preserve. Now, I'm seeing a bit of red there, so let's add a red, both reds actually. Let's red it up with some Pyrrole Scarlet, some quinacridone rose, and you see how it gives more depth to the shadows, especially near the bottom here, I would say, right? And you start getting something, okay? So let's work the left side. Now for the left side, I'll probably keep it lighter, a little bit more easygoing probably, so let's do that. I'm going to start with a big shape. I don't care about this tape, actually. I'm not even going to remove it. I don't mind it at all. It'll just be almost like doing a plein air, and then you have these tapes to the side, you remove them. It gives it some character, if anything. Now, here's the important bit for this section, right? I do see a bit of strong yellows right near the top, so I'm going to try and feed those yellows in. Could use a bit more of an opaque version of yellow. That's the difference between opaque and transparent yellow, right? The more transparent yellow shows better. And you know what? There's a couple of these little branches and stuff. I don't want to overwork, so I'm going to keep this fairly twiggy and simple. Okay, just a couple of these to anchor us to some kind of a foliage form. So, see a bit of just shapes of branches. And you try to keep these random. Nature is random. If you can get these to look random, you'll do a good job. And then, of course, near the edges, where I just place those details, you're going to have some leaves. So, you know, you wrap some of the branches with some leaves. A little cliche, but I kind of like it, I have to say. And then this goes all the way up to here. Like that. Okay, good. Now we have this little area. So here you can go maybe a little more specific. So let's do that. So what I'm seeing here is a bunch of rooftops. So I see one rooftop that kind of goes in that direction. It's a little darker. And then another rooftop that's a little lighter. I'm going to adjust the value after I place something down on paper. So we have this. A little lighter, this a little darker. The darker I'm going to add, you see some of these beautiful chimneys, and they almost cast a shadow onto it, right? So something like that. Underneath the building, of course, you're going to have this shadowy area right here with all sorts of interesting details, something like that. Behind it, there's a bunch of buildings. So check it out. We can just continue developing this area. So here we have another building that is just results in this bit of a triangle. That's it. Another triangular roof. We have the dome here. We can paint it almost over what we just placed down. So we have the dome. There's a bunch of details in it, actually. It's quite pretty. And, you know, a bunch of looser details to the left. Once again, you want to bring back, you know, some of the value range. You just go ahead, you know. You can tape if you prefer, right? I'm just super direct with my with the way I paint. I just enjoy it better. So you can tape and never paint over these areas that are lighter. I just enjoy doing it this way. You know, everyone will have. By the way, what time is it? Yeah, I have a painting lesson I need to give soon. So see, like so. And there's some chimneys here and there and some highlights here and there that I'm going to kind of hide behind the foliage a bit. Just hint that they're there. And you see something is happening here. Now to truly get the full range for this dome, we'll go darker on the left side. So around here, maybe you want to go a little stronger. Right? Okay, good. Now, check it out. We have a shadow under the bridge, which I kind of like. So I'm going to use whatever I have here. So these are the legs of the bridge, and then there's this shadow reflection thing. So we can kind of smoothen it out in some select spots to show this is indeed inside the water. Then we can bring back the bridge's legs, as we have shown here. So that's a leg. And that's another leg. I'm kind of just placing them in, honestly, pretty randomly, right? But you see how it starts to get some character. The top of the bridge is definitely lighter. Might be a bit warmer, but that's fine for now. And you know, if you really want a reflection, you can kind of go like this. Very gentle. See? Something like this usually is enough. And maybe a boat or two. We did place like one or two of these here. This one might catch some of the light. There's one here, but it's behind these, so I don't care about that as much. Let's make some of these, you know, actually have a warm color that I could use that I really enjoy. So this is one of my favorites. Anything that's like John Brilliant, a bit of a warm, peachy, peachy opaque yellow is wonderful. Can be quite useful too. So let's see if this fits in here. I'm gonna put some of it on my palette and then kind of work it, see? So this could be lighter, so you just place that in. Some of these roofs are a little, you know, could be lighter, so we just bring that in there. And of course, I don't have an accurate sketch, so I just really put it all together like this directly. So proportions are squeezed, you know, details are merged, which is big fun. That's part of what I love about painting this way. There's the boat here that kind of catches a warm light. And in fact, I see around the bottom of the legs of the bridge a bit of this warmth. And I see a bit of warmth here on this road. So, you know, I'm kind of using whatever I have at hand to start enhancing and bringing out the impression. See these little chimneys here and little details. Now, here's the thing. This is the stage of the painting when things start to look really, you start to get a hint of the impression you're after, right? And that's a fun part because that's where, okay, things are connecting for you. You'll be able to then communicate it to the viewer, right? It's a big perspective shift, right? The trick is, how do you get to this point? And yes, it is sometimes a little more challenging, okay? But it's all about what's inside your mind. It's not about techniques. The techniques are the vehicle, but you actually have to drive it, is the way I see it. Now, I'm gonna make the water a little more blue, carefully. I'm going around the shapes I have, because I feel like it needs to be a little, you know, just a little more blue and stronger. So let's see if I can do that without blending too many of the details I already painted. What I feel like this will do is it'll anchor all of my details a little better and it will feel solid. Okay, so check it out. As I place this blue, see how it makes things just feel a little more solid, right? And I think around, I'll continue it this way, just a glaze. And around here I'm going to pause it because then it goes into the highlights. See? So I think that looks quite nice. Now, of course, there are tons of details here in the windows and all of that. You could start placing those in. So I'm seeing all of these little beautiful windows, right? Tons of them, actually. And by starting to place, there's this circle here. By starting to place all of these, you start to tell the viewers, yeah, this is a building. It has, you know, a bunch of windows on it. It's a very impressive architectural thing. A lot of these are tall windows, right? Their shape is very elongated, right? And if you can get to a point where you're just comfortable doing everything I'm showing you in this painting, right? Let me just show you a bit of a zoom in. See here? If you can get to a point where you're just comfortable doing that, you'll start painting really nice results. Now, is it going to be perfect in every single time? Of course not. And so, there is room, I just want to add another building here. There is room for a more polished result for sure. Like once in a while you'll get, or maybe often, right? You'll get a feeling like, yeah, I actually want to paint something that looks very realistic and very convincing, or, you know, just a little more realistic and convincing, and you just go ahead and do that, you know? No one's holding you prisoner. You get to paint however you want. And that's something some people often forget. So here I am as a reminder to you that you can actually paint however you want. Let's do this. You can paint exactly however you want. You get to create a mess on paper. You get to make something that's highly organized. You get to, and you know what I think more people should be doing, by the way, is immersing themselves in a longer project. I think not enough people go for a bit of an ambitious painting where they know for sure they will not complete it in one sitting. That, I think, is missing from a lot of people's experiences. Work on something you know will take you like a month or two, right? Do something that feels like it will be a challenge, but the challenge isn't necessarily with, you know, how to paint the specific details you're seeing, but rather the challenge is the time and devotion it'll take to paint something, right? I think that has some very good influence on how your art develops, because it almost gives you permission for this painting, don't hurry. Take it easy, and let's see what we can produce here, right? By the way, I'm like 30 minutes into this process. I haven't even mentioned the courses and the club. So be sure to, if you want to support my work, and forget about supporting my work, support your work. Check out the Watercolor Breakthrough Club. I will put a link in the description box below for those who want to join. If you're serious enough about your watercolors and you're kind of tired of not getting the result you want and kind of lying to yourself that, that your work is its fullest potential when you know it's not, check it out. I think you'll have a huge benefit gained from it. Right now you can join, get access to past live streams that we did in the club, and get access to new live streams. So we're doing a live stream every week. You get to send me a painting once every month for critique, so you get my direct guidance on your work, which is, I think, the most valuable aspect here, really. And then you get the community, right? So you get access to a wonderful community of wonderful people who are all aspiring to take their watercolors to the next level and just paint beautiful results. People there are getting accepted into exhibitions, people that are painting some of their best work, doing commissions. If you want to start being inside that kind of a circle, and make no mistake, the circle of people you surround yourself with does influence your results, then I would welcome you to join the club. I'm going to put a link below, okay? And if you want to see more in-depth like techniques and more in-depth subject matter that I paint, things that are a little longer demonstrations than even the live streams on YouTube, then I highly recommend you join. There is just pure educational value. It's a club membership, so it's a subscription, but you can cancel at any time. So no worries there, I would recommend you commit. I would recommend you commit for the year because it ends up being cheaper. And that way you're locked in, but everyone will make their own decisions. But yeah, I started to like what I'm seeing on paper, so I think I'm gonna pause this one here, maybe add a flag or two. I'm seeing a bit of flags there. I might just end up, in a couple of hours or days, revisit this one and see if I can adjust some of the details. But this is what you're seeing me doing now for the past probably 10 minutes. That's the heart of the painting process, right? That's the thing. Okay, yeah, flags. Got to focus, Liron. Now starting to paint other details. That's the kind of thing that will take your painting to a completed state. That's the real work. What you first put on paper is fun and nice, and it's it's playful and it's great, and it sets up the tone for the rest, right? But where the real work is done is right now in the trenches, right? So I might share soon like a more complete version of this. I might not. We'll see. We'll see about it. Just a flag. I don't even know what a flag looks like. I'm just kind of painting it as I see it. Apologies to my Hungarian friends out there. Hopefully that's what the flag looks like. I know it's a little too small to see anyway. I will add, see, you get pulled into that's exactly where you want to be. You want the process to captivate you, right? And I'm like, oh, I see all sorts of cool stuff. So I do see some shadows on the legs of the bridge here, right? And these shadows actually do reflect in the water. So you could do this, right? You could dry them a bit first and then do this. Get a very gentle effect. I see a bit of a stronger dark here at the heart of the, this area here, right under the yellow. You can do this endlessly, and in fact, that's how a lot of paintings are done. Even when you look at oils and media that you really work on developing the shapes one by one. It's just a constant adding, subtracting, adjusting, right? And make sure, so I'm going to give you one kind of close to the end of this video pro tip, make sure you paint stuff you actually enjoy, because that's how you don't have to persevere, right? You don't have to push through the ugly stage and blah, blah, blah. You don't have to push through anything. I mean, painting isn't torture. You have to enjoy it. So I don't want you pushing through stages of the painting you don't enjoy. What I want you to do is to be fascinated with every aspect of the thing you're painting having so much fun that you're compelled to just continue and keep going, right? That's what I want you to do. So let me show you the result up close. I'll probably, I don't even want to sign it yet because that mentally it tells me, yeah, I'm going to revisit this one. Oops, flipped my pencil off the paper, the table. So you see, and it's a bit hard to, not all of the shapes register fully. I'll show you a scan too of this one. But this is what watercolor is all about, really. And you look at these beautiful transitions in the background, right? Just a hint of the mountain ridge, a hint of the bridges, a hint of the shapes. That kind of thing, you know, that's what watercolor is for. That the great fun that is taking a blank piece of paper and turning it into something that tells a story, whatever story it is, right? And you can modify that story, you can do whatever you want with it. If you feel like, you know, this is too dull colors, let me pick up some of this more fiery red and just go ahead and, you know, place it in. You can do you can do whatever you want, you know. Here, for the boats, right? A bit of, I don't know, other colors, right? And then on their shadowy side, I completely forgot about. Again, you see, I'm getting carried away because this is such a cool scene. So I'm going to place the shadow here to the left. See, something like this. Just give it a bit more depth. There's a bit of the trail that the boats leave behind. So you could do that too. You can just kind of place that in here. Bit of a trail. Usually it's a two-line trail, right? Make it not as symmetrical. And you know, you got yourself a scene. Pretty simple, right? Pretty straightforward. I could, again, do another go and work more slowly and build the shapes up very slowly. But remember, there is something to a perfect sense of freedom that allows you to enjoy the process. This could be a wonderful preparation for a painting, right? I can decide, okay, yeah, I want to do a more polished version of this one, but I want to first get familiar with the scene, right? I want to feel like I better understand it. Check it out. I feel like a bit of warmth. Right here on some of these walls will do wonders. You know, I don't know why, but here goes, right? Looks really cool. Cool in the sense of great, not cool in the sense of cool, actual cool. It's probably the wrong word to use in this context, right? You want to maybe adjust some of the bottom here, just to indicate there's a big door here, and then it goes into shadows, right? There's actually a row of trees here we can include. See, it's very pushed to the back, but still. Just a fun process. Just go for it. Not every painting has to be you painting every single detail exactly right. It's kind of boring, you know. Experiment, try it out. Doesn't cost you much, just a piece of paper and some paint. Then, for the big, more impressive work you sink your teeth into, as I mentioned earlier, then you get to put a bit more effort into it. Then the effort comes in the form of not like, oh, I'm tearing my hair out, but more in the form of, I'm going to devote the next couple of weeks to this painting, if I have to. You know, I'm going to paint small details one by one till it all connects. Whenever there is a wash that's kind of large and you want to paint it, let's say, with a bit more flow, right? That's the word I was looking for. A bit more flow and a bit more of a, I just feel like I have to add this. A bit more flow and a bit more wateriness, then sure, go ahead, you know. Do that when it's necessary. I'm not saying you paint everything shape by shape and make it dull and boring. Not at all, you know. Whenever you feel like you need to paint something that's a little more flowy and watercolory and loose, go ahead and do that, even for the detailed complex piece, you know. Watercolor is all about knowing yourself. Know what you enjoy, know what subject matters you enjoy, know what ways of painting you enjoy. Don't paint like someone else, it's not as fun. Paint like yourself. It's the best thing you can do. If you want to discover more about how to paint like yourself, join the Watercolor Breakthrough Club. I'm going to put a link below. Would be happy to see you there. Make the best investment in your art career. Whether you're a hobbyist or a serious painter, if you want to turn this into a career, you really have to join. I mean, that's for sure. If you want to teach learning directly from me, you have to join, right? If you want to sell your paintings, you got to join. I highly recommend it. Sell one painting, you cover up the whole membership cost if you do a good job. In any case, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon. Huge thanks to you for making it possible for me to just make tons of free content. Thank you to the club members who also allow that. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video. Till next time, take care.